Captain Maya Johnson had always been a dreamer. From the moment she was a little girl growing up in a small, quiet town in Georgia, her head was filled with visions of airplanes soaring high above the clouds. She would sit for hours on end in her backyard staring at the sky, watching planes leave trails behind them as they disappeared into the horizon. To young Maya, those airplanes weren't just machines. They were symbols of freedom, adventure, and possibility. But even back then, she knew that dreams like hers came with challenges. In her neighborhood, most people thought careers like flying planes were reserved for others, people who didn't look like her or come from places like hers. Maya's family wasn't wealthy, but they were rich in love and encouragement. Her mother worked 2 jobs to make ends meet, and her father spent his evenings fixing cars in their driveway. Despite their busy lives, they never missed an opportunity to remind Maya that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. "If you can see it, you can be it," her mom often said, though sometimes Maya wondered if that saying applied to someone like her. After all, when she flipped through magazines or watched TV shows about pilots, she rarely saw anyone who looked like her. The faces she saw were usually men, almost always white, wearing crisp uniforms and standing proudly beside massive jets. Still, something inside Maya refused to let go of her dream. As she grew older, Maya became more determined than ever to break barriers. She studied hard in school, excelling in math and science despite the teasing from classmates who thought girls didn't belong in those subjects. When she told her guidance counselor about wanting to become a pilot, the response was less than encouraging. "That's a tough field to get into," the counselor said with a shrug. "Maybe you should think about something else." Those words stung, but instead of discouraging her, they fueled Maya's fire. If anything, she decided right then and there that she would prove everyone wrong. Her journey wasn't easy. Money was tight, so Maya took out loans and applied for every scholarship she could find. She worked part-time jobs after school and during summers, saving every penny to pay for flight lessons. Her first time in a cockpit was both terrifying and exhilarating. The controls felt foreign under her hands, and the sheer power of the engine hummed beneath her feet. But as the plane lifted off the ground, Maya felt a rush of joy unlike anything she'd ever experienced. For the first time, she truly believed she could do this, not just as a hobby, but as a career. Years passed, and Maya's dedication paid off. She earned her private pilot's license, then her commercial license, and eventually graduated top of her class from aviation school. Each step forward brought its own set of obstacles: racism, sexism, skepticism, but Maya faced them, all with grace and grit. Along the way, she learned to tune out the doubters and focus on her goals. By the time she landed her first job as a co-pilot for a regional airline, she had already overcome more hurdles than most people faced in a lifetime. Now, at 34 years old, Captain Maya Johnson stood tall as one of the few black female captains in the entire industry. Her uniform was impeccable, her posture confident, and her reputation spotless. She commanded respect not because of her title, but because of the countless hours she'd spent honing her craft. Flying wasn't just a job for Maya, it was a calling. Every takeoff and landing was a testament to her perseverance, and every passenger aboard her flights trusted her with their lives. On this particular morning, Maya woke up early, ready to tackle another day in the skies. Today's route was a familiar one: New York City to Los Angeles, a cross-country flight that many travelers relied on for business trips or vacations. As she packed her bag and slipped into her uniform, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This was her life now, a far cry from the little girl who once dreamed of flying while sitting in her backyard. Yet, even as she prepared for what promised to be a routine flight, Maya knew that being a trailblazer came with its own unique challenges. Not everyone was comfortable seeing a black woman in charge of a massive aircraft, and she had encountered her fair share of raised eyebrows and whispered comments over the years. Still, she carried herself with dignity, knowing that her presence inspired others, even if some people struggled to accept it. When Maya arrived at the airport, she walked through the bustling terminal with purpose. Travelers of all ages bustled around her, some rushing to catch their flights, others lounging in cafes or browsing duty-free shops. Some glanced at her uniform and nodded approvingly, while others barely noticed. It was funny, Maya thought, how people reacted differently to her depending on their own biases. A few children waved excitedly when they spotted her wings pinned to her chest, and she smiled warmly, waving back. Kids always seemed to understand instinctively that flying was magical, no matter who was behind the controls. After checking in with her crew and running through pre-flight procedures, Maya made her way to the boarding gate. She liked to greet passengers as they boarded, putting nervous flyers at ease and answering any questions they might have. It was part of her philosophy as a pilot. Safety was paramount, but kindness mattered too. As she stood near the entrance of the jet bridge, clipboard in hand, Maya felt a sense of calm wash over her. This was where she belonged, in the sky, guiding people safely to their destinations. But little did Maya know, today's flight would test her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Among the passengers waiting to board was a woman whose actions would challenge Maya's patience, professionalism, and resilience. Though Maya couldn't see it yet, this flight would become one of the most memorable of her career, not because of the destination, but because of the lessons it would teach her about courage, community, and the power of standing together against ignorance. The boarding process began smoothly enough, as it usually did. Passengers filed onto the plane in an orderly fashion, some chatting excitedly about their upcoming trips, others scrolling through their phones or settling into their seats with headphones already plugged in. Captain Maya Johnson stood near the cockpit door, greeting travelers with a warm smile and offering reassurance to those who seemed anxious. She knew how intimidating flying could be for some people, especially on long-haul flights like this one from New York City to Los Angeles. Her calm demeanor often helped put nervous passengers at ease, and she took pride in making everyone feel welcome aboard her aircraft. As the line of passengers moved forward, a tall, blonde woman wearing oversized sunglasses and designer clothes stepped up to the gate agent. She carried herself with an air of entitlement, her voice loud and commanding as she demanded extra legroom despite already holding a premium first-class ticket. "I need more space," she insisted, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the counter. "This seat isn't good enough for someone like me." The gate agent tried to explain that all first-class seats were identical, but the woman wasn't having it. She huffed dramatically, drawing stares from nearby passengers who exchanged amused or annoyed glances. Eventually, the woman, whose name was Karen, made her way down the aisle, still grumbling under her breath. When she reached the front of the plane, her eyes landed on Captain Maya, standing near the cockpit. For a moment, Karen froze, her mouth slightly agape as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then, without warning, she pointed directly at Maya and said loudly, "Excuse me, is she our pilot? Are you serious? I don't feel safe with someone like, well, you know." Her voice trailed off awkwardly, but the implication was clear. She gestured vaguely toward Maya's skin tone, leaving no doubt about what she meant. The comment hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating. Passengers turned to look at Maya, unsure of how she would respond. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others leaned forward, bracing themselves for what might come. Next, a tense silence settled over the cabin, broken only by the faint hum of the plane's engines preparing for departure. Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself before responding. She had faced comments like this before, though they never failed to sting. Still, she refused to let anyone diminish her authority or professionalism. Not here, not now. With a composed expression, she approached Karen and introduced herself politely. "Good morning, ma'am," she said, her voice steady and confident. "I'm Captain Maya Johnson, your pilot for today's flight. I have over 10,000 hours of flying experience, including extensive training in adverse weather conditions and emergency procedures. Your safety is my top priority." Karen crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes behind her sunglasses. "That's great and all," she replied dismissively, "but I've never seen anyone like you in charge of a plane before. How do I know you're qualified?" Her words sent a ripple of discomfort through the cabin. Several passengers exchanged incredulous looks, while others shook their heads in disbelief. One elderly man seated nearby muttered under his breath, "What does being black have to do with anything?" His wife patted his hand gently, silently urging him to stay calm. Maya ignored Karen's insult and maintained her composure. "Ma'am," she continued patiently, "I assure you that I meet and exceed all the qualifications required to operate this aircraft. If you'd like, I can provide additional information about my credentials once we're airborne." But Karen wasn't satisfied. She scoffed loudly, shaking her head as if nothing Maya said could convince her otherwise. "No offense," she snapped, "but I'd rather talk to someone higher up. Can I speak to your manager or supervisor or whoever's in charge?" At this point, other passengers began chiming in, defending Maya against Karen's accusations. A middle-aged woman seated across the aisle leaned forward and said firmly, "Ma'am, this is ridiculous. Captain Johnson has probably flown hundreds of flights safely. Why are you questioning her abilities just because of how she looks?" Another man added, "Yeah, I've been on one of her flights before. She handled turbulence like a pro. You're making a scene over nothing." Despite the growing chorus of support, Karen remained stubborn. She raised her voice, insisting that she deserved answers, and refusing to take her seat until someone addressed her concerns. By now, nearly everyone on the plane was watching the confrontation unfold, their expressions ranging from irritation to outright anger. A flight attendant intervened, attempting to defuse the situation. "Ma'am," he said gently, "Captain Johnson is highly trained and experienced. There's really no cause for concern." Karen shot him a glare. "Don't tell me what to think," she retorted. "I pay good money for these tickets, and I expect competent service. That includes having a pilot I can trust." Her words sparked murmurs of disapproval throughout the cabin. Even some of the quieter passengers began whispering among themselves, criticizing Karen's behavior and expressing admiration for Maya's poise. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording the exchange, capturing both Karen's tirade and Maya's calm response. Through it all, Maya remained unfazed. She understood that Karen's prejudice stemmed from ignorance, not fact, and she refused to stoop to her level. Instead, she focused on de-escalating the situation, speaking softly but firmly. "Ma'am," she said, "I completely understand your concerns, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. However, we need to ensure the safety of all passengers, so I must ask you to take your seat so we can prepare for departure." Karen hesitated, clearly torn between continuing her protest and relenting. Finally, after a long pause, she sighed dramatically and stormed off toward her seat, muttering something unintelligible under her breath. Though she eventually sat down, her scowl remained firmly in place and she continued to shoot suspicious glances toward the cockpit. Once Karen was seated, Maya stepped back into the cockpit, closing the door behind her. For a brief moment she allowed herself to exhale deeply, releasing the tension that had built up during the encounter. It wasn't easy being the target of such blatant discrimination, but Maya reminded herself why she had chosen this career in the first place. She flew planes not to win over skeptics like Karen, but to inspire others, to show them that dreams didn't have limits based on race or gender. And judging by the reactions of her fellow passengers, she knew she had succeeded in doing exactly that. Outside the cockpit, conversations buzzed quietly as passengers discussed what had just happened. Many expressed outrage at Karen's behavior, while others praised Maya for handling the situation with grace and professionalism. Little did anyone realize that the drama was far from over, and that the events of this flight would leave a lasting impact on everyone involved. The tension in the cabin lingered long after Karen retreated to her seat, sulking and muttering under her breath. Passengers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief, while others whispered to one another about the confrontation. It was clear that Karen's behavior had struck a nerve, not just with Captain Maya Johnson, but with nearly everyone on board. The mood aboard the plane shifted from excitement for the journey ahead to a collective sense of unease, as if an invisible storm cloud had settled over the aircraft. Maya, now back inside the cockpit, took a moment to collect herself, before continuing with pre-flight checks. She sat quietly in the captain's chair, staring at the array of instruments and switches in front of her. Her hands rested lightly on the controls, steady despite the emotional turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Though she had faced prejudice, before each encounter left its mark. Today, however, felt different. This wasn't just about Karen. It was about the weight of representation, the unspoken responsibility Maya carried every time she stepped into the cockpit. She knew that how she handled this situation would speak volumes not only to the passengers on this flight, but also to anyone who might hear about it later. As she reviewed the flight plan, Maya reminded herself why she chose this path. Flying wasn't just a job, it was her calling. Every takeoff and landing represented years of sacrifice, hard work, and resilience. She thought about the little girl she used to be, dreaming of airplanes while sitting in her backyard. That little girl didn't have many role models who looked like her, and now, decades later, Maya realized she had become exactly what she once desperately needed, proof that dreams were attainable, no matter the obstacles. Still, moments like these tested even her strongest resolve. Karen's words echoed in her mind, not because they held any truth, but because they highlighted the persistent biases Maya encountered throughout her career. No matter how skilled or accomplished she became, there would always be people like Karen quick to judge based on appearance rather than ability. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Was it worth it? Did she really want to keep fighting against ignorance and prejudice day after day? But then something remarkable happened, something Maya could never have anticipated. Just as the ground crew signaled that boarding was complete and preparations for departure were underway, a small voice piped up near the front of the cabin. "Excuse me," came the soft yet firm tone of a child. Everyone turned to see a young girl, no older than 8, standing in the aisle. Her curly hair framed her face, and her wide eyes sparkled with curiosity. Clutching a stuffed animal tightly in one hand, she tugged gently on Karen's sleeve with the other. Karen looked down, startled by the interruption. "What is it?" she asked irritably, clearly annoyed by the distraction. The girl tilted her head, her expression earnest. "Why are you being mean to the pilot?" she asked innocently. "My mom says she's really good at flying planes. She's probably saved lots of lives." A hush fell over the cabin as dozens of eyes turned toward Karen, waiting to see how she would respond. For a moment, Karen seemed caught off guard, as though she hadn't expected to be challenged, especially not by a child. Her mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't come. Meanwhile, the girl continued, undeterred by the awkward silence. "I think she's brave," the child added, her voice filled with admiration. "And smart, too. You should say sorry." If the previous confrontation had been uncomfortable, this new development was downright surreal. Passengers exchanged amused smiles, some nodding approvingly at the girl's boldness. Others chuckled, softly under their breath, clearly enjoying the tables turning on Karen. One man seated nearby leaned forward and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Out of the mouths of babes, huh?" Karen flushed red, visibly flustered. She glanced around the cabin, meeting the disapproving stares of her fellow travelers. Realizing she was outnumbered and outmaneuvered, she stammered, I didn't mean anything bad, I was just asking questions." Her weak defense did little to sway public opinion. A woman sitting across the aisle chimed in, her voice sharp with sarcasm. "Oh, sure. Asking questions is totally fine. But maybe next time, try Googling first instead of embarrassing yourself." Laughter rippled through the cabin, breaking the tension. Even the flight attendants struggled to suppress grins as they moved about, ensuring everyone was buckled in for takeoff. Emboldened by the growing support for Maya, more passengers began sharing their own stories. One older gentleman stood up slightly from his seat and addressed Karen directly. "Ma'am, I don't know if you remember me, but I was on one of Captain Johnson's flights last year during that big storm on the East Coast. Let me tell you, she handled that turbulence better than anyone I've ever flown with. If anyone deserves respect, it's her." Another passenger joined in, adding, "Yeah, and let's not forget that becoming a pilot takes years of training and discipline. Not everyone can do it. Maybe you should focus less on judging people and more on appreciating their skills." Each comment reinforced Maya's authority and professionalism, leaving Karen increasingly isolated. She sank lower into her seat, her earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of collective disapproval. Though she tried to maintain her defensive posture, it was clear she had lost the battle. With a reluctant sigh, she muttered, "Fine. Whatever. Can we just get this flight over with?" Despite the resolution, or lack thereof, of the confrontation, the energy in the cabin had transformed entirely. What started as tension and discomfort had evolved into a shared sense of camaraderie. Passengers bonded over their support for Maya, united in their rejection of Karen's prejudiced remarks. Some even clapped lightly when Maya re-emerged from the cockpit to make a brief announcement over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice warm and composed, "thank you for your patience during our earlier delay. I want to assure you that your safety is my top priority, and I'm honored to have the privilege of flying with you today. We'll be departing shortly, so please ensure your seats and tray tables are in their upright positions." Her words were met with applause, both spontaneous and heartfelt. Several passengers called out encouraging phrases like, "We trust you, Captain," and "You've got this." Maya smiled gratefully, touched by the overwhelming show of support. It reminded her that while prejudice existed, so did kindness, and sometimes all it took was one person standing up for what was right to inspire others to do the same. Back in her seat, Karen remained silent, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. She avoided eye contact with everyone around her, clearly embarrassed by the turn of events. Meanwhile, the young girl who had sparked the shift returned to her seat beside her mother, beaming with pride. As the engines roared to life and the plane began taxiing down the runway, the atmosphere aboard the aircraft felt lighter, almost celebratory. For Maya, the incident served as a powerful reminder of why she continued to push forward despite the challenges. Yes, there would always be people like Karen, those who doubted her abilities simply because of her race or gender. But there would also be allies, advocates, and admirers who recognized her talent and determination. And perhaps most importantly, there would always be children watching, learning, and drawing inspiration from her example. As the plane lifted off the ground, soaring into the vast blue sky, Maya allowed herself a small smile. The road ahead might still hold turbulence, but she knew she wasn't alone. Together, with the support of strangers turned advocates and the memory of a courageous little girl, she could weather any storm. As the plane climbed higher into the sky, the initial tension from earlier began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm and unity among the passengers. The confrontation with Karen had left an indelible mark on everyone aboard, but instead of lingering, resentment it seemed to have sparked something unexpected, a shared bond. Strangers who had never met before were now exchanging smiles, nods, and even quiet conversations about what had just unfolded. It was as if the entire cabin had collectively decided that Karen's behavior wouldn't define the tone of their journey. Instead, they chose to rally around Captain Maya Johnson, celebrating her professionalism and resilience. Inside the cockpit, Maya focused intently on guiding the aircraft through the clouds, ensuring a smooth ascent. She monitored the instruments carefully, adjusting controls as needed to maintain stability. But even as she concentrated on the technical aspects of flying, part of her mind remained preoccupied with the events that had transpired moments ago. While she appreciated the outpouring of support from the passengers, she couldn't help but reflect on how exhausting it felt to constantly prove herself in a world that often doubted her abilities. Still, today's incident reminded her of why she kept pushing forward, not just for herself, but for those who looked up to her as a symbol of hope and possibility. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, the young girl who had confronted Karen sat wide-eyed, staring out the window at the endless expanse of blue sky. Her mother leaned over and whispered, "You did good back there, sweetheart. That took a lot of courage." The girl nodded shyly, clutching her stuffed animal closer to her chest. Though she didn't fully understand the gravity of her actions, she could feel the warmth of approval radiating from the other passengers. Several people had complimented her bravery, and one woman even gave her a small pack of cookies as a token of appreciation. After a while, curiosity got the better of the little girl. Tugging gently on her mother's sleeve, she asked, "Can I go say hi to the pilot?" Her voice was soft but filled with excitement. Her mother hesitated for a moment, unsure if it would be appropriate to disturb the captain mid-flight. Sensing her hesitation, a nearby flight attendant overheard the request and smiled warmly. "Let me check," she said, stepping toward the cockpit to relay the message. Moments later, the flight attendant returned with a nod. "Captain Johnson says she'd love to meet you," she told the girl, "but we'll need to wait until we're cruising steadily at altitude." The news thrilled the child, and she spent the next few minutes bouncing slightly in her seat, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. When the seatbelt sign finally turned off and the plane settled into its cruising altitude, the flight attendant escorted the girl to the cockpit door. As it opened, Maya greeted her with a bright smile, crouching down slightly to make eye contact. "Hi there," she said kindly. "I hear you wanted to meet me?" The little girl nodded eagerly, her cheeks flushing pink with shyness. "Yes, ma'am," she replied. "My mom says you're really good at flying planes. I want to be a pilot when I grow up, just like you." Maya's heart swelled at the comment. She extended her hand, inviting the girl inside the cockpit. "Well, welcome aboard," she said warmly. "Come on in and I'll show you around." For the next several minutes, Maya gave the girl a mini tour of the cockpit, explaining the purpose of each instrument and control panel. She pointed out the altimeter, which measured the plane's height above sea level, and the throttle, which controlled the engine's power. The girl listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder, as she absorbed every detail. At one point she asked, "How do you know where to go? Do you use a map?" Maya chuckled softly. "Sort of," she replied. "We use advanced navigation systems that tell us exactly where we are and where we're headed. It's like having a super smart GPS built into the plane." The explanation fascinated the girl, who peppered Maya with more questions. "Have you ever flown through a storm?" she asked. "What happens if something goes wrong? Do you get scared?" Maya paused thoughtfully before answering. "Yes, I've flown through storms plenty of times," she said. "And sometimes things don't go exactly as planned, but that's why we train so hard, to handle any situation that comes our way. As for being scared," she smiled reassuringly. "Being a pilot means trusting your skills and preparation. Fear doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes manageable because you know you're ready for whatever happens." The girl nodded solemnly, clearly impressed by Maya's confidence. After a few more minutes of conversation, Maya handed her a small pin shaped like an airplane wing, a keepsake traditionally given to children visiting the cockpit. "Here you go," she said. "This is for you. Maybe someday you'll earn your own wings." The girl beamed with pride, clutching the pin tightly in her hand. "Thank you, Captain," she exclaimed. "I'm going to keep practicing so I can fly planes too." As the flight attendant led the girl back to her seat, the cabin erupted in applause once again. Passengers craned their necks to catch a glimpse of the interaction, many smiling fondly at the sight of the young dreamer returning to her seat with newfound determination. The energy aboard the plane felt lighter now, almost celebratory. Even Karen, still sulking in her corner, seemed to soften slightly, though she avoided making eye contact with anyone. Back in the cockpit, Maya allowed herself a moment of reflection. Interactions like these reminded her why she loved her job, not just for the thrill of flying, but for the opportunity to inspire others. Every time she met someone eager to learn about aviation, especially young girls of color, she saw a piece of her younger self looking back. These moments reignited her passion for breaking barriers and paving the way for future generations. As the flight continued smoothly, Maya made another announcement over the intercom, thanking the passengers once again for their patience and understanding. This time, however, she added a personal note. "I also want to take a moment to thank all of you for standing up for me earlier," she said. "It meant more than words can express. And to the little girl who visited the cockpit, thank you for reminding us all that dreams are worth chasing, no matter how big or difficult they may seem." Her words drew yet another round of applause, this time accompanied by cheers and whistles. Passengers clapped enthusiastically, some even calling out, "We're proud of you, Captain, and you're an inspiration." Maya felt a lump rise in her throat, overwhelmed by the kindness and solidarity surrounding her. In that moment, she realized that while prejudice and ignorance might never fully disappear, neither would the power of community and compassion. Karen, for her part, remained largely silent for the rest of the flight. Occasionally, she glanced around the cabin, taking in the camaraderie and joy that had blossomed despite her earlier behavior. Though she didn't join in the celebration, it was clear that the experience had left an impression on her. Perhaps not enough to change her deeply ingrained biases overnight, but enough to plant a seed of doubt about her assumptions. Hours passed, and the plane cruised steadily across the country, carrying its passengers toward their destination. For most, the journey felt shorter than expected, thanks to the uplifting atmosphere aboard the aircraft. Conversations flowed freely, laughter echoed through the aisles, and snacks were shared generously. Even the turbulence they encountered midway through the flight failed to dampen spirits. Instead, it became an opportunity for Maya to demonstrate her expertise, earning even more admiration from the travelers. By the time the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, the mood aboard was nothing short of triumphant. What had started as a tense and uncomfortable situation had transformed into a powerful reminder of human connection and resilience. Passengers disembarked with smiles on their faces, many pausing to thank Maya personally before leaving the plane. Some promised to share their stories online, hoping to spread awareness about the importance of diversity and representation in fields like aviation. As Maya watched the last passenger step off the plane, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Today hadn't been easy, but it had been meaningful. It reinforced her belief that progress wasn't always linear. It came in waves, through moments of challenge and triumph alike. And as she walked through the terminal preparing for her next flight, she carried with her the knowledge that she wasn't just a pilot. She was a beacon of hope, a trailblazer, and a testament to the idea that no dream was too big to achieve, even in the face of adversity. As the plane descended into Los Angeles, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sprawling city below. The flight had been long, but the atmosphere aboard remained lively and upbeat, thanks to the camaraderie that had blossomed among the passengers. Conversations continued even as the seatbelt sign lit up again, signaling the approach to their destination. Some travelers exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch after such a memorable journey. Others simply sat back, reflecting on the events of the day and marveling at how much had changed since boarding hours earlier. Captain Maya Johnson guided the aircraft smoothly through its final approach, her hands steady on the controls as she navigated the descent with practiced precision. She could feel the weight of gratitude from her passengers, not just for getting them safely to their destination, but for being a source of inspiration during turbulent moments. As the wheels touched down gently on the runway, applause erupted throughout the cabin once more. It wasn't loud or overwhelming this time, but heartfelt and sincere, a quiet acknowledgement of everything Maya represented. Once the plane taxied to the gate and came to a stop, Maya made one last announcement before opening the doors. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice warm and full of emotion, "thank you for flying with us today. It's been an honor to share this journey with all of you, and I hope you enjoyed your flight as much as I did. Safe travels ahead, and remember, no matter what challenges you face, keep believing in yourself. You never know who might be watching and drawing strength from your example." Her words resonated deeply with everyone aboard. Passengers unbuckled their seatbelts and gathered their belongings, many taking extra care to express their appreciation as they filed past the cockpit. A middle-aged man paused to shake Maya's hand firmly, saying, "You handled that situation beautifully, Captain. You're an incredible role model." A young woman stopped to hug her, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you for showing me that it's possible to break barriers," she whispered. Even children waved enthusiastically, holding up drawings they'd made during the flight, pictures of airplanes with captions like "Future Pilot" scrawled across the top. Karen was among the last to leave, lingering awkwardly near the exit. She hesitated for a moment, glancing toward Maya but avoiding direct eye contact. Finally, she muttered something under her breath that sounded vaguely like, "Good job," though she didn't elaborate further. While her apology If that's what it was, felt half-hearted at best, Maya chose not to dwell on it. Instead, she offered Karen a polite nod, recognizing that change often began with small steps, however reluctant they might seem. With the cabin empty, Maya took a few moments to herself, sitting quietly in the cockpit as the ground crew prepared the plane for its next departure. She reflected on the whirlwind of emotions she'd experienced throughout the day: frustration, doubt, pride, and ultimately, joy. Each passenger interaction had reinforced her belief in the power of resilience and community. Though prejudice still existed, and likely always would, the overwhelming support she'd received reminded her that progress was happening, slowly but surely. Later that evening, as Maya scrolled through social media during her layover, she discovered videos of the incident had gone viral. Someone had recorded Karen's initial confrontation and uploaded it online, sparking heated discussions across platforms. Thousands of comments poured in, most of them defending Maya and condemning Karen's behavior. People shared stories of their own experiences with discrimination, while others expressed admiration for Maya's grace under pressure. Messages flooded her inbox too, many from aspiring pilots, especially young black girls, who thanked her for paving the way and proving that representation mattered. One message stood out in particular. It was from a teenage girl named Jasmine who wrote, "I've wanted to be a pilot for as long as I can remember, but I always doubted myself because I didn't see anyone who looked like me doing it. Seeing you handle that situation today made me realize I can do anything I set my mind to. Thank you for being brave enough to chase your dreams so the rest of us can dream bigger." Reading those words brought tears to Maya's eyes. She knew firsthand how isolating it could feel to pursue a career where you didn't see yourself reflected in the people around you. Back when she was Jasmine's age, there were no black female pilots in her hometown to look up to. Her decision to become one hadn't just been about fulfilling her own ambitions, it had been about creating space for others to follow in her footsteps. And now, seeing the impact she'd had on strangers halfway across the country filled her with a profound sense of purpose. The attention wasn't without its downsides, of course. Some trolls tried to discredit Maya, questioning her qualifications or accusing her of exaggerating the incident for publicity. But these voices were drowned out by the overwhelming tide of positivity. Supporters rallied behind her, calling out the trolls and amplifying Maya's achievements. Journalists reached out requesting interviews, eager to highlight her story as a testament to perseverance and courage. Though Maya appreciated the recognition, she remained focused on what truly mattered: inspiring the next generation. That night, unable to sleep, Maya decided to write a letter, not to respond to her critics but to thank those who had supported her. She posted it on her personal blog, knowing it would reach people far beyond her immediate circle. In the letter, she recounted the events of the flight, emphasizing not just the challenges but also the beauty of human connection. "Today reminded me that we're stronger together," she wrote. "When someone stands up against injustice, even if it's just a child speaking truth to ignorance, it sends ripples of change into the world. To everyone who cheered me on, defended me, or simply believed in me, thank you. Your kindness fuels my determination to keep pushing boundaries and breaking barriers." The response to her letter was overwhelming. People from all walks of life responded with messages of encouragement, sharing how her story had touched them. Teachers wrote about using her example to inspire their students. Parents described reading her letter aloud to their children, hoping to instill values of empathy and resilience. One grandmother sent a photo of her granddaughter wearing a homemade pilot hat, captioned, "This is our future captain." Amidst the flurry of activity, Maya couldn't help but smile at the irony of it all. What had started as a potentially demoralizing encounter had turned into a catalyst for connection and growth. She thought about the little girl who had visited the cockpit, Jasmine and her dreams of flying, and even Karen, whose prejudices hinted at deeper societal issues. Every person played a role in shaping the narrative, whether intentionally or not. By morning, Maya felt renewed, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Flying wasn't just about navigating skies, it was about navigating humanity, with all its complexities, flaws, and potential for greatness. As she prepared for her next flight, she carried with her the lessons learned from the previous day. That courage inspires courage, that solidarity transcends differences, and that every action, no matter how small, has the power to spark meaningful change. Stepping onto the tarmac, Maya glanced up at the clear blue sky, feeling a familiar rush of excitement. Somewhere out there, a young girl was dreaming of soaring through those same clouds, inspired by the knowledge that someone like her had already done it, and Maya, she was ready to guide her one flight at a time. As the sun rose over Los Angeles, casting a soft golden light across the airport terminal, Captain Maya Johnson prepared for her next flight. The events of the previous day still lingered in her mind, but they no longer weighed her down. Instead, they fueled her determination to keep pushing forward, to be the kind of person who inspired others simply by existing authentically in her role. As she walked through the bustling concourse, Maya noticed something different about the way people looked at her today. Some travelers stopped mid-stride, pointing discreetly and whispering to their companions. Others approached her directly, thanking her for her courage or sharing how much her story had impacted them. One man, clutching a newspaper with an article about her viral moment on the front page, stepped forward hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Captain Johnson?" he asked, his voice tinged with awe. When Maya nodded, he continued, "I just wanted to say thank you. My daughter's been telling me all morning that she wants to be a pilot now because of you. You've given her hope." Maya smiled warmly, touched by the sentiment. "Tell your daughter I said she can do anything she sets her mind to," she replied. "The sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning." Moments like these reminded Maya of why she chose this path, not just to fly planes, but to create ripples of change wherever she went. Her presence mattered, not only as a professional but as a symbol of possibility. Every handshake, every smile, every word of gratitude reinforced her belief that representation wasn't just important, it was transformative. Later that morning, Maya boarded her next flight, a short domestic route from Los Angeles to Denver. Though the passengers were different, the energy aboard felt familiar. People greeted her warmly as they entered the plane, some even referencing the incident from the previous day. One woman handed her a handwritten note that read, "Thank you for showing us what grace under fire looks like. We're proud of you." Another passenger gave her a small bouquet of flowers purchased from the airport gift shop. "For everything you stand for," the woman said with a wink. Inside the cockpit, Maya took a deep breath before beginning her pre-flight checks. Despite the outpouring of support, she knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would still be days when prejudice reared its ugly head, when doubts crept in, or when the weight of being a trailblazer felt heavier than usual. But she also knew she wasn't alone anymore. The solidarity she'd experienced, from strangers turned allies, from children dreaming of wings, from colleagues who stood beside her, had become a source of strength she could draw upon whenever needed. As the plane taxied down the runway, Maya reflected on how far she'd come since her childhood days in Georgia, staring up at the sky and imagining herself among the clouds. Back then, she hadn't known if her dream was possible. She hadn't seen anyone who looked like her doing what she aspired to do. Yet here she was, commanding respect, not just as a pilot, but as a leader, a mentor, and an advocate for change. And while she didn't set out to become a public figure, she understood now that visibility came with responsibility. By embracing her role as a role model, she could help pave the way for future generations. During the flight, Maya made another announcement over the intercom, addressing the cabin with sincerity. "Good morning, everyone," she began. "This is Captain Maya Johnson, and I'm honored to have you with me today. Flying has always been my passion, but recently I've been reminded of something even more meaningful: the power of community. Each of us brings unique strengths and perspectives to the table, and together, we can achieve incredible things. So whether you're traveling for work, visiting loved ones, or chasing your own dreams, know that you're capable of greatness. Keep reaching for the skies, because the world needs what only you can offer. Her words resonated deeply with the passengers, many of whom applauded softly after she finished speaking. Some jotted down notes on napkins, saving her message to revisit later. A young boy seated near the window turned to his mother and whispered, "Mom, I think I want to fly planes too." His mother smiled, squeezing his hand affectionately. "Then you should go for it," she said. "Captain Johnson showed us that anything is possible if you believe in yourself." When the plane landed safely in Denver, Maya stepped out of the cockpit to bid farewell to her passengers. One by one, they filed past her, offering smiles, nods, and words of encouragement. A grandmother paused to hug her tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You remind me of my granddaughter," she said. "She's only 6, but she talks about becoming a pilot someday. Seeing you gives me hope that she'll get there." By the end of the day, Maya returned to her hotel room exhausted, yet fulfilled. She scrolled through her phone, reading messages from people around the world who had followed her story. Teachers wrote about incorporating her example into classroom discussions. Parents described bedtime conversations with their kids about breaking barriers and standing up for what's right. Even airlines reached out, asking if she'd consider speaking at industry events or mentoring aspiring pilots. Among the messages was one from Jasmine, the teenage girl who had written to Maya earlier. This time, Jasmine included a photo of herself, wearing a pilot's uniform during a recent school career fair. "I did it," the caption read. "Because of you, I finally had the courage to try." Maya stared at the photo for a long time, feeling a lump rise in her throat. It struck her how interconnected life truly was, how one act of bravery could inspire another, creating a chain reaction of positivity and progress. She realized that her journey wasn't just about achieving personal success. It was about contributing to something larger than herself. Every time someone looked at her and saw potential instead of limitations, she helped reshape the narrative about who belonged in aviation and beyond. That night, Maya sat by the window of her hotel room, gazing out at the city lights below. She thought about the little girl who had confronted Karen, the passengers who had defended her, and the countless others whose lives she had unknowingly touched. She thought about the challenges she'd faced and the victories she'd celebrated along the way. And she thought about the future, the young dreamers who would one day soar above the clouds carrying the torch she had lit. For Maya, flying wasn't just about navigating airplanes, it was about navigating humanity, with all its complexities, flaws, and boundless potential. It was about proving that no obstacle was insurmountable, no dream too big to chase. And though she knew the journey wouldn't always be easy, she also knew it would always be worth it. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. She wasn't just a pilot. She was a beacon of hope, a bridge between the past and the future, and a testament to the idea that representation matters. Somewhere out there, a child was looking up at the stars, imagining themselves among them. And thanks to Maya, that child knew they could make it happen. The next morning, Maya woke up early, ready to tackle another day in the skies. She packed her bag, slipped into her uniform, and headed to the airport with a renewed sense of purpose. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she was prepared to face them head-on, not just for herself, but for everyone watching, waiting, and dreaming of their own place among the clouds. Because in the end, the true measure of success wasn't just where you landed, it was how high you helped others fly.